Verina is probably the strongest support as of the time this video releases, and she is also one of the only units, if not the only one, who basically requires a 4-star weapon. She is a Rectifier Spectro Support who provides various team-wide buffs, healing, off-field follow-up attacks and a death protection passive, which means she fixes my skill issues. Hence, let's talk about her skills, her best weapons, echoes, her best echo set, her best teams, her sequence nodes and how to play her correctly. Let's go! First up are her skills. Her basic attacks are, to be honest, just basic attacks, and we will need them, especially her heavy attack, to generate the necessary concerto for her. However, we will cover that when we talk about her forte. Her skill is where she starts to shine. While the skill in itself only deals some minor spectral damage, it will also generate 30 concerto energy for her on a 12-second cooldown. This is huge and absolutely integral to playing her well. Her Resonance Liberation requires 175 Resonance Liberation energy to cast, it deals a low amount of spectral damage, restores HP by a flat amount and a portion of her attack, and applies a photosynthesis mark on enemies hit on a 25-second cooldown. When any team member or nearby resonator, that means your friends if you have any, hit an enemy affected by photosynthesis mark, Verina will launch a coordinated attack, which I will refer to as a follow-up attack going forwards because I play too much HSR, dealing a small amount of spectral damage and restoring HP to the resonator who inflicted said damage. Said photosynthesis mark lasts for 12 seconds and this follow-up can be triggered once every second, or in other words a maximum of 12 times. This not only provides sustain, but also is a very reliable way to trigger the 5-piece rejuvenating glow set. Let's talk about her forte. Her forte allows her to hold up to 4 stacks of photosynthesis energy. Every 5th hit of her basic attack, skill or intro skill will grant her 1 stack, and you basically only care about her skill and intro skill for this matter anyway. As I already have mentioned earlier, this is where her heavy attack comes into place. Casting any heavy attack will consume 1 stack and restores 12 concerto for her while also healing all nearby party members. Her intro skill deals some minor damage and you don't really care much about this, well, aside from the photosynthesis stack and the 10 concerto it generates. Actually, you do care, because the intro sends you airborne, which impacts your possible rotation. But we will talk about that later when we talk about her rotation. Her outro is what we care the most about. Her outro skill can be cast when her concerto is at 100 energy, and while it will restore HP equal to 90% of her attack to the next character switching in, which is again another way to trigger the 5-piece rejuvenating glow set, she will also grant a 15% all-type damage deepen to the entire team for 30 seconds. This damage deepen is an undiluted modifier and basically allows your entire team to deal 15% more damage basically all the time. For her inherent skill Grace of Life, it will protect 1 party member from dying once every 10 minutes, while also granting them a shield equal to 120% of her attack. This skill is locked behind Ascension 4, and while it can fix your and my skill issues, if you want to save some level up and Ascension materials, getting Verina to level 40 Ascension 2 is sufficient enough, as at that point you can unlock her other passive, Gift of Nature, which will increase all party members' attack by 20% for 20 seconds whenever she casts a heavy attack, her ultimate or outro skill. Ignoring her skills, we can get to her skill priority. Honestly, we mostly care about the buffs she provides to the team, so you actually don't have to level any of her skills at all. Reason being that only her healing and damage actually scales with her skill levels, and we do not care much about that in any case. Well, except if you have skill issues and you do need said healing. However, if you feel like getting the maximum potential out of her, or you just like her a lot, prioritize her ultimate first, followed by her forte circuit and skill, then her basic attacks, and lastly her intro skill. Before we can actually talk about her echoes, stats and weapons, we have to talk about her energy requirement. With Verina, we want to aim for 100 to 120% additional energy regeneration. As every resonator has a base of 100, this means we are looking at 200 to 220% total ER.
This also varies a little bit between teams, which means depending on your team, you might need a little more or a little less.
In any case, to be able to reach these thresholds, that is not necessarily easy, and it makes her quite limited in which weapons she can use. So let's talk about them first. Her by far best and honestly only weapon of choice, at least in my opinion, is Variation. Not only does it provide a hefty chunk of ER, it also helps her rotation massively by providing 8 to 16 additional Concerto once every 20 seconds, depending on the refinement. If you have her sequence too, you could also take the craftable Rectifier number 25 for around 7% more DPS, but staying with Variation makes her rotations much smoother, and the small amount of a DPS gain is honestly not really worth it to trade in for a less smooth rotation. A third and last option would be the Rectifier of Voyager, who also provides ER% and restores 12 resonance energy when casting resonance skill. This lowers her ER requirements a little bit, but missing out on the Concerto from Variation makes her rotation much less smooth, and I personally would only recommend this weapon if you do not have Variation. However, it is still better than Rectifier number 25, as we don't really care about her damage. As those 3 weapons are the only ones providing ER, and it is basically impossible to hit the ER requirements without an ER weapon, heals are literally the only choices she actually has. If you have absolute gut rolls on your substats and you are around 60 to 70% ER just from your substats alone, you actually have other options, but this will take a really long time until you actually have that. And even then, especially the Concerto provided by Variation just makes it really nice to play. That said, her only set of choice is a 5-piece Rejuvenating Glow in a 4-3-3-1-1 setup with a Bellborn as her Echo skill. For her main stats, we want either healing bonus or attack percent on the Bellborn, double energy regeneration on her 3 costs, and attack percent on her 1 costs. If you're using Variation or Rectifier number 25 and double ER on her 3 costs, that is a total of 64% plus 52%, which means a total of around 116% energy regeneration. Which means depending on your team, you either already have hit the breakpoint and are good to go, or you are looking at most for 1 additional substat roll. If you're using the 3-star R5 Rectifier Voyager, you are looking at 1 to 2 additional substat rolls. After hitting said ER breakpoints, you can prioritize attack percent and flat attack. Other substats don't matter as much, but liberation damage percent and crit values are the next best choices. These are the final total stats I would recommend for her for the endgame. The stats shown here reflect the overview screen. Last but not least, we will have a short look at her sequences, although we really only care about her S2 if at all, at least as of now. Her sequence 2 makes her rotation much smoother to play thanks to additional 10 Concerto generated from her skill. Her S4 is great for Spectro Rover and any possible Spectro DPS or hybrid we may get in the future. For her rotation, we have 2 possible rotations, which are both quick and efficient and honestly also very similar. Our intro will send us airborne, which means we are starting off mid-air. This means our best rotation is intro into plunge, into skill, into heavy attack, echo and ultimate at the same time, but in this order, into outro. As enemies are quite aggressive, you possibly want to dodge before the skill and you want to cancel the second heavy attack as soon as possible with your echo and ultimate, as you will gain the Concerto from her passive on cast and not on hit. However, this might leave you short on just a little bit of Concerto, especially if you do not have Variation. If you do have time, and by that I mean enemies are not necessarily attacking you, you can change the rotation slightly into intro, into 1 to 3 mid-air basics, into plunge, into skill, into heavy cancel with echo and ultimate into outro. This takes slightly longer, but it is a very safe way to guarantee all Concerto regardless of your weapon in exchange for possibly being interrupted mid-air, which honestly is quite detrimental to your combo, but also not the end of the world. Knowing her rotations, we can cover her teams. Well, given she is currently the best support in the game, she would love a slot in every team. The problem is here we cannot have her in every team, so let's focus on the teams she performs best in, which are honestly mostly the current meta teams. Pairing Verina with Jian and Mortifi or Alto is great, as is Verina with Encore and Sanhua. Verina also works fantastic with Calchado and Jianjing or Sanhua, as well as Havoc Rover and Dungeon. She honestly is just a fantastic support. You can probably list literally every team here and she will do her job better than most alternatives. So yeah, that being said, as always, play for fun first and foremost. Thank you so much for watching, don't forget to like and subscribe, leave me a comment on your thoughts about Verina and have a nice day. Peace.